Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling a question that's probably crossed the mind of every homeowner at some point. Will a mold inspection detect all types of mold? Look, a lot of us tend to treat these inspections like some sort of foolproof magic wand. Wave it around, get a piece of paper, and boom, your home is perfectly safe. But is that actually true? We're going to investigate exactly that today and see if standard mold inspections are really the ultimate guarantee we think they are.
So, does a single inspection guarantee your home is completely mold-free? Well, no, absolutely not. And that no carries some incredibly high stakes for both your health and the safety of your home. Relying on just a single basic inspection without really understanding its limitations, that can leave you totally exposed to hidden biological hazards.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for The Explainer today. First, we'll bust the mold inspection myth. Then we'll look at what standard inspections actually cover, why air sampling so often fails, where the dangerous stuff actually hides, and finally, how to go about finding a genuinely qualified inspector.
All right, starting right off with Section 1, the mold inspection myth, expectation versus reality.
There is a massive disconnect here. The common expectation is that getting an air test and some lab results will definitively prove a home is safe. But the reality is actually quite different. Thorough visual inspections combined with moisture mapping are the true gold standards. Relying solely on an air test is a surprisingly common and, honestly, a potentially dangerous mistake.
Moving right along to Section 2, what standard inspections cover, the 4 core activities.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty of the inspection, we really need to talk about what we're looking or smelling for. Enter MVOCs, or microbial volatile organic compounds. I know, sounds like a mouthful. Basically, these are distinct gases released during mold's metabolic process, and they're what create that classic musty, earthy basement odor. And get this, according to NIOSH, that smell isn't just a household nuisance. It's actually a scientifically backed warning sign. If you smell it, mold is metabolizing nearby.
So a proper inspection revolves around 4 core activities. You've got your visual walkthrough, looking for obvious water stains or peeling paint, then an odor assessment to sniff out those MVOCs. Next is moisture detection, using thermal imaging and meters, and finally sampling, either air or targeted surface testing. But I really want to emphasize that third one, moisture detection, because without excess moisture, indoor mold simply cannot survive. An inspector tracking down moisture pathways is literally doing the most important work of the day.
Which brings us to Section 3, why air sampling fails. The snapshot analogy. You really have to think of air sampling as just a snapshot. It's a single moment in time, not a continuous movie of your home's overall air quality. And that is a massive limitation. These air machines usually only run for a few minutes, so if a hidden mold colony isn't actively releasing spores into the air during that exact, specific window of time, the machine misses it entirely. It gives you a snapshot, sure, but definitely not the whole story. It's almost comical how easily mold can essentially just hold its breath while the test is running.
And to make things even more complicated, neither the EPA nor NIOSH has established health-based numerical standards for acceptable mold levels in indoor air. Let that sink in for a second. If an air test comes back with a spore count of, say, 800, there is zero official federal threshold telling you if that number is actually dangerous or safe. Without established safety benchmarks, using standard air tests as your only metric for safety is pretty deeply flawed.
All right, Section 4, where dangerous mold hides. The invisible villains.
Let's take a look at one of the worst offenders out there, Stachybotrys chartarum. You probably know it better as black mold. This stuff requires chronic moisture, materials that have been soaking wet for a good 1 to 2 weeks. But here is the truly sneaky part. It releases relatively few airborne spores, and the ones it does release are heavy. They settle super quickly in clusters instead of just floating around. Plus, it loves to hide deep inside cellulose materials, like your drywall or wood framing. Because of that low airborne spore count, it totally evades standard air sampling.
So, where exactly are these blind spots? Well, inside wall cavities, for one. Mold there is completely invisible to a surface check. You absolutely have to use moisture meters or thermal cameras to find the wet zones feeding it. Then there's under the flooring. Moisture wicking up from the ground is perfectly shielded by your hardwood or tile. And don't forget HVAC systems, completely inaccessible unless you've got specialized borescope cameras. If mold is in there, the system is actively blasting spores throughout your entire house while remaining completely hidden from the naked eye.
Oh, and we really need to clear up a huge misconception right now.
Mold color does not reliably indicate the species or the danger level. Just because a patch of mold looks black doesn't automatically mean it's the highly toxic stuff. And on the flip side, some really dangerous mold can look greenish or white. You just can't eyeball it. Only rigorous lab analysis of a targeted surface sample can confirm exactly what you're dealing with.
Which leads us to our final part, Section 5, Finding a Qualified Inspector, Hiring for Safety. 0. That is exactly how many federal certification requirements exist for mold inspectors in the United States. 0. While a few states do have their own licensing, nationally the barrier to entry is alarmingly low. Literally anyone can print out a business card and declare themselves a mold inspector. And that is exactly why you have to be highly vigilant about who you actually hire.
So how do you find the right person? Well, a truly qualified inspector is going to follow a strict logical sequence. Step 1, they'll conduct a thorough visual walkthrough. Step 2, they'll perform moisture mapping to actually find the source of the water intrusion. And Step 3, they'll execute targeted sampling, like surface tests, but only based on the hard evidence they uncovered in those first 2 steps.
To make sure you're getting an inspector who actually follows that sequence, you essentially need to interview them before letting them into your home. Arm yourself with these screening questions. What specific methods and equipment do you use? Do you use hygrometers and moisture meters? What are your exact industry certifications? And will the final report include photos and detailed moisture mapping data? If they hesitate or can't answer those confidently, politely walk away.
And listen, here's a massive red flag to watch out for. If an inspector immediately recommends extensive air sampling before they've even done a thorough visual walkthrough, beware. Skipping straight to air tests proves their priorities are completely backward. It usually means they just don't have the structural and moisture tracking expertise required to actually find the hidden source of your problem.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty unsettling thought to ponder. What's hiding behind your walls right now? Because as we've seen in this explainer today, just because you can't see it, and just because an air test didn't catch it, absolutely does not mean your home is safe. But knowledge is your best defense. Ask the right questions, demand moisture mapping, and whatever you do, don't settle for a tiny snapshot when you really need the full picture. Thanks for tuning into the explainer today.